welcome to the first episode of the Crescent podcast. Exciting. Okay, I hope everyone's good and has had a good week. I thought I'd keep it light for the first episode and start off with a bit about me, my career journey, and how I ended up here. And then at the end, I'm just going to throw in a few of my favourite websites and apps that I use quite regularly to help me in my everyday work. So, straight after school, I went to Keele University up in Staffordshire and I studied criminology and psychology. So a bit different to what I do now. After graduation in 2007, I had a few admin jobs. And in 2009, I began working at Hever Castle in their estate office. And it was here that I kind of inadvertently fell into marketing because after about a year or so, I managed to persuade the marketing department that they should be using social media. At the time, I didn't want a career in marketing. I thought that marketing and sales were the same thing. Spoiler alert, they're not. So I was happy to do the social media and get involved with that, but I didn't want to go in a marketing direction. Anyway, they weren't hugely keen, but they said they were happy for me to start a Facebook page, a Twitter account, as it was then, and see how it went. Both accounts grew quite quickly in terms of followers and engagement, and they were doing quite well. And then I left Hever in 2012 for a role in events and fundraising for a private school. And then in 2017, following the birth of my second child, I decided to start my own events business. And I worked on all sorts of events. I did parties, anniversaries, weddings. I did a surprise wedding, which was great fun. Everyone thought they were going to a birthday party and they weren't. It was a surprise wedding. So it was good fun. But in the 4 years that I ran it, I realised that my favourite parts were actually designing and updating the website. I love tinkering with it and trying different things and whatever, and managing the social media platforms. And that they were the bits that I enjoyed the most. By this point, obviously I've had a lot more experience. I have now realised the difference between marketing and sales. So the marketing career, it didn't scare me quite so much, and I was quite willing to embrace it. And then, of course, COVID struck in 2020 and everything just went a bit wrong. I've got 3 children. At the time, they were 1, 4, and 7. And with trying to homeschool them and look after, obviously not homeschooling my youngest, but looking after them and managing in a pandemic, it wasn't viable to keep the business running. And obviously it was an events business, all events stopped. It wasn't feasible or worth it. So I closed the doors on that, which was fine. I wasn't too upset about that, actually. It was definitely the best move. But I was keen to still have something for myself to keep myself sane during COVID. So I set up a wedding blog focusing on weddings in Kent. It was ironically called Weddings in Kent. And because I had a lot of connections then in the wedding industry and in events and with venues and that, I used a lot of those contacts to source ideas for the blog and to feature weddings and events or styled shoots, because that was such a big thing I loved when I did the events business, was doing styled shoots and experimenting with different things. And so a lot of the photographers I knew I had really good relationships with, and they were great at providing content for me to then share and provide tips and reviews and inspiration for people planning weddings and that. So I did that for, I think it was about 18 months, and it definitely helped keep me sane during COVID. And I loved it. And of course, I was always playing around with the website and I was sharing things on socials. And I think I ended up with about 2,000 followers, 2,500, I think, on Instagram. So it did quite well. And I enjoyed it. That was the more important thing. And in 2021, I was offered a chance to work for a local charity doing their marketing and fundraising, which was great. Jumped at the chance, really enjoyed the work. But I quickly realised the fundraising side just wasn't for me. I knew some, I could do it. It was fine. I just didn't really enjoy it. And I wanted to focus more on social media and website design. And someone there actually said to me that I should go and do that on the side. Eventually, I kind of took their advice. I left there, took a bit of time out to assess whether or not going it alone really was the best idea, because it's scary and it would just be me, myself and I again. Like when I worked for my events business, it was just me. And there's the lonely, isolating aspect of that, but also for my personal situation, which I'll get into in a minute. I needed that flexibility. So yeah, in January, I launched Crescent. Sorry, in January 2024, so it's now a year old. I launched Crescent, and it's been incredible. I'm so pleased with how it's gone. But in amongst all of the last 6 years, 6 years, I had my youngest son. We moved house twice. We survived COVID and the multiple lockdowns, during which my daughter started school as well during COVID, so that was quite challenging. Then we discovered that my youngest son, Daniel, is autistic. So that came about because it's weird. They say you shouldn't compare children, but everyone does. And in this instance, it showed what a difference there was. I would compare him from the moment he was born. It was a very difficult pregnancy and that was all complicated, but from the moment Daniel was born, he was just different to my older two children. He had to be touching you all the time, skin to skin. He had to, if he was in my arms, his hand would be on me somewhere, or I'd be like breastfeeding him. He would be touching me somehow. I had to have that skin to skin. I couldn't put him down. He wouldn't sleep on his own. And there were just other things. All of his milestones were a bit late. But then in other ways, he was very smiley. He would hold eye contact. So it was, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just knew he was different. And I mention it now and then to my husband and we talk about it, but we couldn't put our finger on it. But then he had speech delay and he was very selective in when he would talk. He would start saying something and then you'd reply and engage in conversation. And then he'd just walk away. Or he'd just look blank and that would be the conversation over. It was very, very strange. Anyway, so we went to a speech therapist and she suggested looking at autism. And it was when we got the report and I saw it all written down in black and white. I was like, he probably is autistic. Now, I didn't know much about it back then. This was in 2022. Yeah, he got diagnosed in 2023, so this must have been in 2022. I didn't know much about it. I started reading about it. Fortunately, my best friend is autistic, and she's worked for 20 years with autistic people and families and young people, and so she's got a lot of experience, personally and professionally. And I asked her, I said, what's your honest professional opinion? Is it worth going for the assessment? Because we could go the NHS, there is long queues for that, and I wanted him to get the support as soon as he could, so I was prepared to pay privately. Anyway, so I asked my friend, and she was like, well, yeah, basically, yeah. So we went for the assessment, and it was just very much like, yes, he is, like, no questions asked. And it's funny because there were things that I didn't even know that would be considered autistic. Are autistic traits, which by themselves wouldn't necessarily mean you're autistic. It's just a trait, but with enough of them and if you tick enough boxes and whatever. So yeah, we found out Daniel was autistic, which was fine, and it's been great. We've managed to get good support for him. He is now in year 1 at school, and he's thriving. And he's in our local school. We thought he'd have to be in a special school. That's what all the professionals said, that he wouldn't cope in a mainstream school. Our village school is really quite small, less than 200 pupils, so it's a nice small school, and he's actually doing really well. He has intervention and things like that, but obviously it's been quite a process going through it all. But it was funny because as I learnt more about it and I was watching him, and I could just relate a lot to what he would do or say, or how you'd watch him process things. And then I started thinking back on my life, my childhood, and things that I've done, and I've always felt like the odd one out. I would never fit in. I didn't really have a set friend group at school. I would kind of flip from group to group and never felt I belonged anywhere. I've always been highly anxious, struggled with my mental health, and there's a whole lot there. So anyway, that questioned myself. So back I went to my friend and I was like, do you think I'm autistic? And she was like, yes, I thought you knew that. So I then ended up going for an assessment. Again, I paid privately. I needed that clarification, yes or no, because If it was, then that's fine. That explains everything. And it just makes everything make sense to me. If I wasn't, and I spent years waiting to get an assessment and then found out I wasn't, I'd feel even more in the dark. So I needed to know one way or another. So we went private, I got an assessment, and I got diagnosed. And when she said to me, yes, we would say that you're autistic, I just burst into tears, because suddenly I just felt such relief that there was a reason for it. And I've since, I can't remember her name, there's a comedian, and she described it so well. She says it's being neurodivergent it's the difference between Androids and iPhones, being neurodivergent or neurotypical. And I just thought that was an absolute eye-opener for me, because it's just a different operating system. So, for example, I prefer Android, so I would say that Android is neurodivergent and the iPhone is neurotypical. And it's just a different operating system. It's a different way of thinking. It's not good, it's bad, it's not right, it's wrong, it's not better, it's worse. It's just different. And that just, it was an absolute game changer. And I feel so much happier in myself. So I got diagnosed in April 2024. So it hasn't even been a year yet. But obviously I'd already started Crescent and everything. But I think it really changed how I approached my work and my networking and everything about my business, because I suddenly felt that I was able to be me. I could be myself. And that's such a big thing for me. And I've banged on about it on blog posts and about being authentic and being a real self, because that's everything. And even with B2B marketing, you're still selling to a person. You're not selling to a robot or a flower pot you're selling to a person. And they are going to want to engage with another person. So you have to be yourself. And when I'm building websites for clients, I always say you need an about page, because people want to get to know you. They want to know who they're working with. Even if it's a service that you're a mechanic and you're just going to come fix their car and off you go. They will engage better if they know who it is that's coming to their house and where you've worked before and what experience you've got. And it just makes you more real, more human, and someone that they're going to want to engage with. So, yeah, this last year has been obviously a massive revelation for me, but it's made me more aware of needing to be authentically me. And it's changed how I approach networking. I still hate it. I still get that feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I just I really don't want to walk into this room, and I don't know what to say to people. But I'll still do it, and I'll go in, and now I've done it so much, there's normally at least one person in the room that I know that I can go to and be like, oh, I know somebody. But also standing, you go into a networking event, you go and get a drink at the bar, or you go and make a cup of coffee, and you're standing next to someone and be like, oh, just say to them, I get really nervous at things like this, or I'm so bad at this. Be light and be honest, and they'll probably engage with you. And that's just how I feel about it. But I think that's come from me feeling more comfortable in my own skin. So, I think I'm definitely kinder to myself. But I think that has helped my business thrive as well, because I'm happier and I'm more confident. And I'm also not so hard on myself when things get too much in life, in work. If I take on possibly too much work that I can't juggle with, and I need to take a step back and have some time out, I don't beat myself up about it. I also try and manage my time a bit better. But before, I used to be really, really hard on myself. And now I'm not. Anyway, so we're now a year into Crescent's journey, and I've experimented with different websites and different apps and platforms, and I have my favourites. I have things I really don't like. I have things I will tolerate for my clients if that's something they really, really want. So social media is supposed to be social. It's supposed to be fun. And yes, you need to post things about your business and services you do, but also keep it light, keep it interesting, be real, be you. I tend to use Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I am dabbling with TikTok and Threads, but That's a softly thing I'm doing there. So for my business, those 3 definitely work. One business that I work with, they do solely LinkedIn because they do just business stuff, and Facebook and Instagram weren't working for them. Absolutely makes sense. You do what works for you. TikTok is a whole world of its own, and I think if you want to tackle TikTok, you need someone who's focused on that and knows it in and out. And I will put my hands up, that is not me. I do not have the time to delve into the hows, whys, and whens of TikTok. I've posted videos, I've shared things, and I'll keep doing that just to keep my toe in, just playing about with it. But if you want to be big on TikTok, I think you've really got to focus a lot of energy into it. And there's Threads. I've only recently got onto Threads, and I quite like it. I never used to like Twitter or X. I don't know. I just had a hatred for it. I don't know why. But I find Threads is kind of like a friendlier vibe. That might sound really strange. I just think, I don't know, maybe it's just that I follow different people now than I was trying to on Twitter before. But it's very wholesome. There's a lot of support out there. So yeah, I'm delving into that a bit more. So I'll keep you posted on what I think about that. Pinterest. Pinterest is great for inspiration. Absolutely love Pinterest. I used it a lot when I had my wedding blog. Yeah, for that sort of thing, for images, it's great. I still don't quite know on a business sense. I don't think there would be any use for it for me for what I do. But I enjoy using it personally, and I have used it professionally. Snapchat, Snapchat just annoys me, and it's such a random. Snapchat really annoys me because I used to use it a few years ago, probably longer than that. But you'd message someone, and then your message would disappear, and then they'd eventually reply, and I can't remember what I said first. And unless they're replying like fairly quickly, the messages just disappear. Maybe it's changed now. I don't know. I can't say I've looked, but I don't think Snapchat's for me. I haven't looked at Telegram or Blue Sky. I think there can be too much of a good thing, too many social media platforms to try and be on. I think you do you. You work out what works for your business. I know Blue Sky is supposed to be like a friendlier Twitter or X, I think they said, but I don't know. I think I'll have to have a look at it at some point just to cure my own curiosity, I suppose. So yeah, love social media, obviously, because I work with it. And I think, yeah, one of my big things I'm focusing on this year, especially with my clients, is to try and make it fun and informative and real. Yeah, I think you're going to be so bored of me saying authentic and real, I have no doubt. Okay, so when I'm scheduling social media, I have recently discovered, it's called Gain app. Ironically, not actually an app. And I'll put a link to anyone I mention in the show notes. But I find a lot of the scheduling apps, for if you're a big company and you've got the budget, you've got Hootsuite, Buffer, Later, Loomly, there are loads of them, and there'll be something to work in your budget. If you're quite a new, small business, but you've got enough clients to need a scheduling app, it's really difficult to find that balance between what you need and what you can actually afford. Anyway, after a lot of research, I found Gain app. I think they're still fairly new. Maybe that's why they're so reasonably priced. I don't know. But I absolutely love it. And they keep coming up with new things that they're bringing out and new things you can do on there. But you can have, I can't remember how many accounts you can have, whatever, but it's very reasonable. And I've had no problems with it so far. Touch wood. I've been using it for like a month, which is very long, but I absolutely love it. So I recommend that. I've used Buffer, Only Social, again, quite reasonable, but not if you want. Oh, that was the other thing. With scheduling, I like to be able to schedule the posts, send them to the client, and the client approve, and then they auto schedule. But to have that client authentication usually ends up costing a bit more. And Gain app, it's all included. It's amazing. I can't praise it high enough. So there's Buffer, there's Only Social, Hootsuite, Contentino. I've used all of those. They're all great at what they do. It just depends if you can afford it. That's what it comes down to. Website design. Right. I have used Wix, WordPress, Squarespace, and Hostinger. And my personal favourite, just because I like the layout and how to use it, is Wix. It's so easy, it's straightforward. If you need an app or plugin to add to it or whatever, it's just so straightforward. If I design a website for a client, I am more than happy to then stay on board and manage it for a small retainer and to just be there if something goes wrong or if they've got a query. More than happy to do that. But more often than not, someone's going to want their website back for them to just keep it, and that won't be able to afford to keep you on a retainer or whatever. And with Wix, it's so easy to just transfer it back to someone and just say, look, there you go, I've done it, it's all yours. And they just make the whole process, everything's just so straightforward. And I love Wix, can't complain about that. I also love Squarespace, but it is quite a bit more expensive. But it's the nicest one to use. I love Squarespace. I don't get to use it often enough, which makes me sad. But if you've got a Squarespace website and you want me to update it, I'd be more than happy to. Oh, I love using Squarespace. I also do WordPress. WordPress isn't my favourite. That's definitely more if you're like behind, what's it called? Programming. That's the word. WordPress is fine. I can use it and it's fine. I've created some great websites, if I do say so myself. I've created some good websites. But I think it's just, if you're more into the programming side of it and writing code and things like that, then it's great. But that's not a path I want to go down. I want to create fairly straightforward websites that are easy to hand back to the client, because it's their website, it's their business. That's how I see it anyway. And Hostinger, I've only just started with Hostinger, actually. It's a new client that I've got, and it seems to be very similar to Wix actually in layout and how to use it. So again, that's quite straightforward. Now, what other things have I used I really like? I have discovered you can do digital business cards. Now, this might not be a revelation to you all, but I was quite impressed by this. I quite like getting little business cards. I like looking at different designs people do. I've designed business cards for people, so I like being creative and playing around with things. But you can now get digital business cards, which makes so much more sense in a way, because it saves on paper and card and time, and it's just there. It's on your phone. So it's just, you get a little app and a QR code and whatever, and it's amazing. So I've designed one, and it's with Blinq. That's Blinq. And it's great. Seems fairly straightforward. Does the job. Recommend that. If you're brave enough to delve into those worlds. I know I've got a client I recently designed business cards for, and I was going to mention to him the digital business card, but I thought that might fry his brain because he's not the most technical person. So when I said that to him afterwards, when I gave him the business cards, he was like, "Yeah, no, I don't want to know anything about that." So fair enough. When I'm editing and making videos, I like using CapCut. They've got great templates and ideas, and it's very straightforward to use. It's an app on your phone. You just upload your video and brilliant, nice and easy. So yeah, they are the main things that I use daily. Obviously, you've got like email and calendars and all of that. I'm very excited by this. I recently amended my website to have a booking system on there so that people can book direct an appointment, to have a video chat or whatever, direct to my diary. And so then it comes up on my phone that I've got a meeting. I was like, this is brilliant. And I'm just so impressed with how well it works. And I hadn't even realised when I sunk my calendars that it blocks out all the other times when I've got things booked in. And yeah, it's just very clever and intuitive. And when I got my first meeting booked through that, I was very, very excited and pleased with myself. So yeah, anyway, that's just a little sidetrack. So I think that's probably enough of me rambling, but we've got some very interesting guests coming up. I'm recording with someone next week and someone the week after. I'm not going to tell you who, it's going to be a surprise, but they're both lovely and very experienced in very different areas. As I said in my little announcement video, this podcast is going to cover marketing, running a small business, neurodivergence, parenting, networking, branding, trends, top tips. There's a bit of everything, hopefully. It may just be me rambling away to no one, and that's fine. I'm just experimenting with this, really. But if there's anything you want me to cover or talk about, or if you want to come on and be a guest, I'd love to hear from you. And just pop me a message wherever you're watching or listening to this. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. I hope you all have lovely weekends and good weeks next week, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. Take care.